Hi, everyone, and we're back here on the last day of the Liyab Virtual Career Fair, a 3-day online event that aims to facilitate interaction between Gen Z talent and organizations in the Philippines' current business landscape. We hope that you had an engaging experience for this last day with the short talk earlier, and of course, those who participated in the mentor calls and company booths today. Before we move on to our final panel discussion, I just wanted to let you all know that the short talks and panel discussions we've been having are live. So feel free to comment any thoughts or questions you might have, and we'll try our best to address them if we have time. And I also encourage everyone to take notes or even screenshots if you want. You can comment them as well as tweet them or post them, tag us if you want us to reshare them later on. And if you would like a certificate for attending the online activities, take note of the certificate code for each event. As a registered participant, you will receive an email with a link to request for a certificate. These codes are our way of ensuring that we award certificates to those who really attended a specific talk or panel discussion. Now, let's go straight ahead to our panel discussion today. It's our last topic, but I think the most relevant one, especially for all of the graduating students out there or young professionals, right? Because landing a job is difficult enough without the pandemic, even more so now that the landscape has changed. Most application processes are now done primarily online, and with that comes its own set of unique challenges. In this panel discussion, we'll discuss how to overcome these challenges and perhaps even how we can leverage the changes brought about by this pandemic to play to our advantage. For this panel discussion, we'll discuss how to over sorry. For this panel discussion, we are joined by Meryl Ligunas, Chief Marketing Officer at Passajob, and Romeo Romero, Talent Acquisition Partner at Canva. Welcome, Meryl and Romeo.
Thank you, Deirdre. And good
Hello.
evening to everyone. Hi, Romeo. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you too. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. And I guess before we begin, for those in the audience who are not familiar with Passajob or Canva, maybe we can give a quick background first of, what the company is about and what you do at the company so that our audience understands like what perspectives you bring into this discussion today. Maybe we can start with Meryl.
All right. So Pass the Job is the first long chain referral based job platform in the Philippines. So to put it in more simple terms, we're a job board, but aside from just applying, you're able to refer. And if your referral or your referral's referral, because we're long chain, gets hired, then you will get a referral fee. So what we're trying to do is help solve the problems of unemployment and underemployment in the country. So we recently just launched, and we're excited also to share with you what we've learned so far, and also to be in this panel with someone from Canva, which is where a company which I worked in before also, and have very good words to say about. So yeah, Romeo, maybe you could say a lot more about Canva.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I was excited to be here as well, knowing that that Meryl was also a Canva not way back when. But I guess to give like a super short introduction to Canva, right? Some of you may already know that it's a online visual communications platform, right? Basically with the mission to empower the world to design. But to break that down into its most simplest form, right? It is essentially a unicorn of a tool that aims to be so easy to use, so accessible that literally anybody, anywhere, on any device, really is the goal, can use it and maximize it to express themselves both creatively and thoughtfully. So, yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen it, go for it, use it. I encourage you.
All right. Thank you, Romeo, and thank you, Mariel. So, our topic for today is really job hunting in 2021, right? So, first off, let's start with, what job hunting is like in this new year in this pandemic, right? How is it different from pre-pandemic, and how is it different from what it was like actually last year during the lockdown? Because it's a little different now. We're not on a pure lockdown as before, so I wanted to, first off, like ask about what are the changes that you've observed so far with job hunting in 2021 specifically. Maybe, Romeo, we can start with you.
Yeah, okay. Well, I guess I can speak from the standpoint of somebody that actually just fairly recently landed my job, right? I actually just started with Canva a little less than a month ago, I would say. And then I started my job prior to this one. I think right before the lockdown started. It was crazy. It was a month. I was enjoying myself, and then suddenly, oof, all these changes, right? Um, from what I've seen, I think on the technical side of things, definitely there were a lot of changes in the sense of what you had to prepare prior to going into that job hunting and then during the job hunting in itself. So prior to the pandemic, right, it was all about dressing to impress. It was about your interview etiquette, mastering your resume so that you would know exactly what to say. It's about going to the office, dropping off your resume, just being the best version of yourself. And then there was that battle with like traffic, right? That we all know that last 5 minutes, you're still in the cab, you're still in the Jeep, waiting to get to that office. But then all of that changed during the pandemic. Now, what we're all thinking about is my internet connection strong enough? Is my camera bright enough? Do I have the right lights here? Can they hear me? Am I on mute when I'm not supposed to be? So just that technical aspect of it already drastically changes the environment. And then we have to go, I guess, to the meat of the change as well, which is basically that now it's more inclined towards being more digitally savvy because the landscape has changed so much in the sense that all these new jobs are opening that require some technical skills, digital skills, even just like what was discussed in the talk yesterday. So all these variables coming into play, and the world is now coming into a better, I guess, better situation of handling it.
Yeah, actually, Romeo, that's a very good point that you had, right? Because it, the process is already digital. That's the company's first peek into your own digital skills. So imagine if you had trouble joining your Zoom room or your Google Meet or whatever like sort of tool that you're supposed to be using, right? That's already like a sign for the company. Oh, if the applicant is having a problem now, what more when they actually start working? So there's a lot of pressure to even just get those digital skills right. How about you, Meryl? What are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on like what job hunting is like now in 2021?
Well, I think super important to highlight what Romeo said about digital because just a quick story. I remember like some jobs ago, I was working for this TV network, and next to the guard was this glass box where applicants can just drop their CVs, and day in and day out talaga merong mga pupunta just to drop their CV. And when you think about it, I'm not sure if it's still there. I doubt it is because so much of diba, applying is already done digitally. And also, I guess, preferences of candidates are also leaning towards remote work. So 49% actually prefer completely remote work and 48% prefer a combination of remote and on-site. So sobrang liit na lang nang natira sa mga those who want to work in the office completely. So it's good that companies are also quite flexible in that sense na giving their employees the opportunity to choose, diba? And I guess another thing to notice is the approach. Like I noticed since the pandemic started that people are not afraid to ask for help. So if you go to social media, Facebook or LinkedIn, people will say na wala, naghahanap sila ng trabaho, they got retrenched, or they're looking for additional sources of income, and ibang layer pa yung nagbebenta sila ng ube pandesal or ng other items, diba? So I think that people are a lot more open now, and like I said nga, parang unafraid to let people know that this is what they need, this is what they're looking for.
I think actually that's so great that you pointed that out, right? Because before, we were a bit shy to post on social media that we're looking for a job. But I think because it's such a collective experience, like marami kang karamay eh. So many people are experiencing it na it doesn't, hindi na siya nakakahiya or hindi ka na siya shy to do it anymore. Which I think is something very interesting kasi, this pandemic, whether you are rich or poor, privileged, ganyan, we are all affected by it. So it's really an experience that is shared by everyone. So when you see someone posting like that, you can't help but feel a sort of, parang, I guess, connection or kinship with that person because they're experiencing the same thing that you are experiencing. So thanks for pointing that out, no, Meryl. I didn't really super notice actually that it's a behavior that we only really started seeing during the pandemic. So I think that's one of the changes that was brought about. And coming from there, though, um, going into a deeper dive about the changes or shifts that in pandemic job hunting, right? Do you think that people have become more open about, looking for jobs because there are less job opportunities available now? Is that it? What do you think about this? Like, do you think there are less job opportunities available now during this pandemic? And I will address this question to Meryl first and foremost because definitely as a job platform, you have some idea on that one.
Right. So we started opening our platform mga middle of last year lang. So we don't have much data. We don't have data from the beginning of the year. Pero what we've noticed is that there are a lot more this year than compared to like the last quarters of last year. So there's a 52% growth from Q3 to Q1 of this year. So, which is a good thing. I guess companies have also been able to adapt kahit papano and hopefully have recovered, diba? Kahit papano. And but then, of course, that doesn't discount na tumataas pa rin yung number of unemployed. So there's, as of March 2021, it's 3.4 million actually. But pre-pandemic, it's 2.3 million. So there are fewer job opportunities now, but that I would like to point out that there are also opportunities that you might not know have or you don't think na existed before. So for example, one of my best friends actually, she's the first Asian hire of a Europe-based company. Because we're working remotely now, parang mas marami na tayong na-access na opportunities. But then again, a downside naman of this is malaki din yung competition natin. So maybe we can talk about that later, how we can have that competitive edge over others also. But it's we also have been talking to some companies na who are saying na if other companies retrench people, sila naman mas mataas pa yung mga kailangan nila na need. So it varies talaga per company, per industry. But of course we hope that there are more opportunities na ma-access ng mga Filipinos, and that's why there's Pass a Job, because we want to address that information gap between that many openings and also the jobs, that many openings and those who are unemployed, and you want to be able to connect them with each other.
Actually, Meryl, it's pretty interesting that you said that. Well, the short answer is there are more job opportunities now, which is great, but also that there are opportunities globally that, weren't originally available to us because remote work wasn't as popular before. So I wanted to ask Romeo about that as well, because Canva has offices in multiple countries, right? So what was it like for you when you were landing this job, especially that because it's for a company that is hiring globally?
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, the first thing I also wanted to say there is that it's actually really amazing how, companies like Passajob are tracking all these things, because it makes the impact so much more powerful, right? When we are able to translate the effect of this pandemic in numbers. So I don't know if you saw my face, but I was completely surprised by the double in, I guess, the people that are unemployed. But to ride on what she already shared as well, right? It's a lot to do with the industry as well and the types of jobs that are available. I think that's affecting the market so much. It's because right now, at least from what I observed, right, way back when I was still a recruitment consultant, what I saw was that when the lockdown happened, suddenly all these brands, for example, are scrambling to establish an e-commerce arm, establish a digital platform, and suddenly that opens up so many gates for positions in the e-commerce segment, but then it closes some of the gates like for the people on ground. So it's kind of like that give and take process that happens, and sad to say, here in the Philippines, we're not all as equipped for that. Um, but the bright thing about that is that, yun nga, so many companies are now adapting to the change, that there are jobs that are starting to open that we don't even know about yet, that we haven't even considered yet. Like, I guess speaking from my experience, to answer these questions, right? Going into Canva, my experience there was that I wasn't sure what exactly they were expecting, in the sense that, we're currently in a lockdown. They were telling me about these plans to grow. Um, but then when I actually got into the company, I mean, I'm happy to report that, from the start of the year, I think our year-to-date hires is a little over 100, and we're still steadily growing. So there are a lot of companies. I mean, I guess steadily growing in the sense that we plan to keep hiring until the end of the year. So that being said, right, there are all these companies that are adapting to this change, adapting to this setting, and it takes a little more patience, but I think we are on the way up. And that's really the good thing about that.
Yeah, thank you so much for your insights, Romeo and Meryl. And I guess it's really to leave our audience with a positive note that there are opportunities. There's a lot of people, a lot of organizations hiring right now. I think it's really just a matter of finding the right one for you, right? I guess like another question that I have regarding pandemic job hunting is, so we know people are hiring, but how are people hiring now? Like, how did the hiring process change over the pandemic? I mean, there are obvious ways that it changed, like Mariel's story earlier, with like from a Dropbox to now online, and you can just like browse the opportunities available. And then obviously, we're all doing like interviews online, but are there other ways that the hiring process has changed over the pandemic? Romeo, maybe we can start with you this time.
Hmm. This one is a good question, actually, because it's really nice to see how recruiters like, myself, have adapted to the sudden change. I think, like what Meryl said earlier, right? We're all kind of in that same ocean, but we're not in the same boat. So we're dealing with this pandemic in different ways, and we never know what's happening behind the screen for anybody. So I can only speak from my experience here in saying that the recruitment process has changed such that a lot of people um, are still trying to really be in line with the goal of the company and the mission and the values of their companies. And in order to translate those kinds of principles and those kinds of methods through the screen. So, what do I mean by that? Prior to the pandemic, conversations or recruiters, the job hunting process was very human, in the sense that you are actually there in the office, you're shaking their hands, you're smiling at them, you're offering them water. It's very, very human in that sense, right? Or at least that's what I'd like to think that it is. But then moving now, where it's also digital, how do you translate being human, being a good human actually, through the screen? How do you make your candidates feel that? I think that's the challenge for most recruiters now, because now we're all actively trying to find a way to humanize the recruitment process through the screen that we're all currently facing. So that's really interesting. But on the other side of it, it's also that it's a challenge for recruiters to be sharper, because, like I said, right, we're not dealing with the same things. we don't all have the same context. Things are changing so rapidly that recruiters need to be more sharp in the sense that they need to pick up all those smaller details. So how do you adjust as a candidate to that is basically going to be your unique selling point in this case.
Actually, I definitely agree with that, Romeo, that there are so many human touches that I guess, like we underappreciated or didn't notice as much before the pandemic. Like exactly that. Like, you know how you have to think about the strength of your handshake, or even how you like, greet people in the office on your way to your interview room, for example, or how you interact with, let's say, other candidates in the waiting room. There were so many like little human connections that can be made throughout the entire process that not a lot of people noticed. But as someone who has hired myself, those are things that we notice, and those are like our peeks into the type of person we are meeting, that during an interview or during that interaction, right? And we lose a lot of that because we just hop on a call and then it's really just a conversation and then you'll leave. Um, and so you're right. I'm glad to know that recruiters are working on or thinking about how to introduce those little human interactions and connections still, even if the hiring process is online. How about you, Meryl? What do you think about the hiring process during this pandemic?
Right. Coming from what Romeo said, no, parang it also resonated with me kasi yesterday I attended the talk of an HR practitioner. And then one of the topics that surfaced was before, like you said, parang you think about the strength of your handshake. And parang there's so much kasi there's so much you could get from someone's body language. You could see their confidence, how they bring themselves, diba? And you see that in face-to-face interviews. But now, because we're online, maraming mga parts, or there's so much of someone's expressions that you don't see. Like you don't see na sa likod ng Zoom background nito, ang kalat-kalat pala ng likod ko. Example, diba? So those kinds of things na, but of course, I guess that's also an urge to job seekers na there, even if you're just at home and sitting, there's still so much you can do. Think about etiquette, Zoom etiquette, diba? Parang make sure that the angle is right, make sure that your internet is stable. If you have to tell your family to turn off Netflix first, or turn off the Wi-Fi of some of your devices, that's something you can also do, diba? But also, just to reiterate our earlier point about everything being digital, I was actually like, I've only met with my boss. If he's watching, hi to Pen Mariano, the CEO of Job. I only met him once, but we've been working together for almost a year now. And similarly, I have friends. Even my brother was hired completely remotely, diba? Tapos pinadala na lang yung laptop sa bahay. So it's really ang galing rin how companies have adjusted to this. And even in Canva, I have friends who I know who are still there na nasiraan ng laptop. Then the Vibe team sends the laptop to the house, diba? So kudos also to people like that who make our work experiences even more pleasant. So yeah, there's just, when you think about it, we probably haven't given ourselves much credit, both sa job seeker side and sa employer side. There's so much that we were, before we started streaming, Deirdre, Romeo, and I were talking about how much we've had to go through and how much we've had to learn. So yeah, just speaking from personal experience na, when I got hired for Job, I was actually overseas. I came from an overseas work stint. So, hindi na rin na-require yung face-to-face interaction na yun. But, of course, there are pros and cons. And as job seekers, we need to rise to that challenge and make sure that we still present ourselves and pitch ourselves well.
Thanks, Meryl. I actually wanted to throw that question back to Romeo just a little bit. As someone who has landed the job in 2021 during a pandemic. As a job seeker, what were the things that you noticed that changed in the process for you?
Yeah. Oh gosh, where to start? Definitely. I would have to say that just the process in itself of getting into the setting of looking for a job in the first place, right? Because I was coming from a situation where I wasn't even sure, do I want to be actively looking? And if I will be actively looking, how do I start? Because before you could attend events, you could actually meet, stakeholders in career fairs like this one that were done on ground, that you could basically attend all those little sessions, talks and all that. But then now you're kind of stuck with just going through job boards and going through the websites. And it's interesting how they have adjusted so much to make that, a more interesting experience and such a great experience, because that was definitely one of the changes I saw, right? I wasn't expecting these job stores like job boards like Pass a Job, right? That ang daming nagbago, alam mo yun, you didn't think you would see these jobs there, but now they're there. So that's the first initial touch point in itself was already an experience, right? And then there's the whole experience of the interview itself, because now it's all virtual. It's about dressing to impress from the top up, right? And making sure that your background was great, because nobody's going to see that below you're wearing, your shorts. You have a blanket over to get comfortable. So again, all these little changes that affect your experience as a candidate impacts also the way you come across, the way you communicate what you want to communicate, because you're in a different setting. I would like to say it's a more comfortable setting because you're in the comfort of your home. And then I think I can let me the what Meryl shared about Canva, I can definitely attest to that. It's one of my experiences as well. That as a fun fact, I'm actually all the way here in Pampanga. Our office is in Makati, and yet they were still able to let me feel that onboarding experience. Having my equipment shipped to me, them making sure that I was very comfortable in my setup at home, even extending additional help if I wanted to, for example, like get an electric fan or something like that because of the heat that I know we're all experiencing right now, diba? So it's really nice to see that companies have adapted and changed that much and are thinking about what are these candidates experiencing? How do we help them experience what they can't in our office?
Actually, thank you for sharing that, Romeo. And all of the organizations we've featured during this career fair, well, I've met with and I talked to just to really find out how they are, how's their culture like. And I can attest that each and every company we featured here, really, they take care of their employees. There are companies who are open to like just flexible workforce, meaning they're working from everywhere, right? Or even companies who have like already a vaccination plan in place. So it's been very interesting also how like all of these it's not rare. Um, just to say that, like, Canva's not the only company out there that does this. There are a lot of companies with a lot of heart, with a lot of care for their employees, especially during this time. Um, and that's one of the things that I appreciate the most about how companies have adapted, because they could have easily adapted to make it more strict, for example, with their employees, but instead they've chosen to act with a lot of like empathy towards their employees and a lot of care, actually, and super love noticing that during this pandemic. I guess on that note, right, where there is an opportunity to be a bit more strict, to act with a bit less empathy, have hiring standards become stricter in the past year? Because I mean, both of you have pointed out that people are hiring globally, so like there's a lot more competition out there, and the process has changed that probably not everyone is prepared to adapt to. So, have hiring standards become stricter in the past year? What do you think about this, Mary?
Siguro I'll leave most of the answers to Romeo later, but maybe just some insights about this is that, yun nga, like I mentioned earlier, because of remote work, there are a lot more opportunities and in farther parts of the world that we have access to, which is a great thing. But like we said earlier, the disadvantage of that is there's just so much competition and it's tougher now. So it's really I guess a challenge also for job seekers to equip themselves, to upskill and to learn so that you have an advantage over the other applicants, diba? And there was a survey that says this is pre-pandemic. This is years old, but it says that recruiters only look at the resume for 6 seconds, and now that it's a lot more challenging, I don't know how long the recruiters will have to look. So maybe Romeo could answer for him personally. But yeah, it's just well, I guess for me, speaking as someone who's also looking for people to join the Pass a Job team, I wouldn't say that I'm stricter, but probably a lot more empathetic. If someone was, I was supposed to get on a call earlier with someone, with a candidate, but she said that she had to rush her father to the hospital. So things like that, we have to understand each other, that there are a lot of things beyond their control. And we have to also remember that beyond our employment, beyond us as employees, we are family members, we're husbands, wives, we're friends, diba? We're partners. So we need to take that into consideration and just show a lot more, like you mentioned earlier, empathy and kindness, diba? And because like at the end of the day, those companies that she also mentioned, people are behind that. So there are hearts and minds who actually think about these things for us. So also, I guess this is an urge for companies who have not probably adapted as well to, I guess, to get ideas from other leaders, diba? But yeah, I guess Romeo could give a lot more insight about this. But I hope I hope that both companies and job seekers become more understanding of each other, whether or not hiring standards have become stricter.
Yeah, actually, Meryl, I saw that study, the same eye tracking study that says 6 seconds. It's now actually like up by a little bit, like it's now 7 seconds, at least the latest study. But as someone who has screened on several different uh, job channels, it's really quite fast. I can't say I've timed myself, but the level of speed to make that decision of whether I want to see this profile or not is like almost as if like you're swiping left or right on a dating app. Like it's that fast. I don't know if that's the same experience for you, Romeo. How has it been like for you?
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely, I think it comes with the fact that, and it just to be in that realistic setting, right? It's because things have changed so much that it's now an employer-driven market because there's so much supply, right? And demand, even if it's steadily growing, it's still not able to match it. So to address that, I mean, in my case, it's also the same, right? It's about, okay, there are certain things that I am looking for. How do I look for them? And how do I maximize my time? As a recruiter. But then at the same time, I think what I like about things, I don't want to call it getting stricter. I prefer to say that it's more of the standards are changing because it's adapting to the changes in the job itself, right? What I like about it is that it's also encouraging job seekers to invest more in themselves. Because at this point in time, right, you're literally competing with a lot of other people as well who might be on the same level as you, may have a little more experience than you. Some people may have 6 more months as compared to where you started. But then how do you weigh that, right? As a recruiter, that's the challenge there. Does 6 months really do that much change? Um, and it again, it's a call out to job seekers now. It's a reminder to them, and this is something that one of my colleagues actually shared with me just a while back, just fairly recently, right? that the way to go about it is to really think about not just think about the recruitment process not just being about you, but also being about you and the company together. So it's encouraging you to sharpen those skills, sharpen the saw, as they say in Seven Habits, right? To keep investing in, okay, what can I bring to the table that will make me more unique? Such that, even with all these changing standards, with these standards that are getting stricter, to say I'll still stand out and people will still want to talk to me. So that's really it, I would say. I mean, it's a give and take situation, right? Recruiters have to be, like I said, sharper, but then job seekers also need to keep investing in themselves. What skills can I keep growing? What do I have to learn? How do I keep up with all these changes?
Thanks for sharing that, Romeo. And I have a personal like follow up question there. Since both of you are hiring during this time, can you share like what's the number one thing you're looking for in a candidate's profile right now? For any sort of role, like what's the general thing that you're looking for in a candidate's profile during a pandemic? Maybe Romeo, we can start with you, and then we can go to Meryl.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, that's a big one. I think for us here at Canva, I mean, what we pride on is that what we take pride on rather is that we are a people first company. So what we always look for is the resonance of our values and the people that we talk to. The one predominant one is actually be a good human. It's one of the things that we really try to look at. In the way that we ask our questions, we don't want to focus just on your skills. We also want to focus on what do you do outside of work? How does your character reflect in the way that you work? All those smaller details. Because at the end of the day, we like Meryl said, right? There are hearts and minds working behind the scenes in these companies. And we'd like to believe that they're thinking what's best, not just for the business, but also for the people that is building the business, which is essentially the foundation of their business in the first place. So I think the short answer there is we are looking for the character of the person beyond just their skills.
Thanks, Romeo. How about you, Meryl?
Right. Maybe one of the things that I really prioritize is the effort that someone places in their application. Since we're a job board, we and people apply through that job board for our opening. You would see those who leave the cover letter blank. You'd see na, ay, hindi masyadong nag-effort to. Parang just maybe applying to different jobs that match their title, diba? So, immediately that's someone you would want to, or someone who you don't pay much attention anymore. And I guess for me, it's the willingness to learn because value technical skills can be learned, can be taught, but then character is something super important, and the values that someone upholds. So coming from what Romeo said earlier, it's super important to know that the person that you are hiring or interviewing is aligned with the values that not just the company has, but even you as a person, diba? At the of course, it's easy to find someone who is smart and who will work hard, but it's not easy to find someone who has good intentions, who has a heart of service, maybe, or who is empathetic towards others. So it's like what Romeo said, it's value. Sobrang laking bagay nun in hiring someone.
I guess on that note, and it's a bit of a segue to our next question. But how does one show that? I guess in like let's say my profile on Pass a Job or in my resume, right? How do I show that I have the character that the company is looking for? And I guess like the broader question here is like with all of these changes, with like the availability of opportunities or like changes in the hiring process, and even with the changes in standards, how can job seekers adjust? And I guess not just in their profiles, but even in their whole job seeking behavior. uh, Romeo, maybe we can start with you on that one.
Sure, sure. I think in terms of looking out for those characteristics, right? Um, my advice there is just for job seekers to really be genuine, because you are interacting with another person, regardless of whether or not you're face to face, right? And I'd like to think that, well, most recruiters, I'm not sure if Meryl, you've experienced this as a hiring manager yourself, right? But there's that gut feel when you're talking to somebody and you can tell that they're being genuine, that they're sharing with you genuine experiences, things that they've actually felt and seen and done. And it's so different from when somebody is tailoring a story specifically to what they think you're looking for. So that's the thing about values, right? It's not something that you grow overnight. It's something that you practice. It's something that you live and you breathe. And even if you can adapt the value, putting it in action also takes a while. Like, I'd like to think that, having the values of Canva and resonating with them doesn't necessarily mean that I am the embodiment of all of them on a day-to-day basis, right? That's the challenge there. But the thing about it is that when you are coming from a place like Meryl said, of good intentions, and you're trying to be as genuine as possible and making the recruiter feel exactly what you felt during your experiences, then it kind of aligns. It all just clicks into place. It's a gut feeling that I can't explain, but it's really there.
No, I get what you mean about like it being a little bit difficult to explain as someone who's done so many interviews in my entire career. It's really just different. And I think this is a real skill that, HR professionals and hiring managers have. It's like when you meet a person, you know when they're being genuine. And sometimes, which is I think like the sad part, and one of the reasons we started Liyab in the first place is nerves sometimes gets in the way. Your own confidence in your own abilities gets in the way. So even if like on paper and you have the experiences and everything, but if you allow your doubts or your worries get in the way of like during your interview, it's very hard to show the real genuine side if you are even the best version of you, right? um and I guess like what's great about, interviewers I've had in the past and how I was trained as an interviewer myself, it's really our burden a little bit to make sure that the candidate is comfortable enough to show that, right? That we have to assure them, hey, this is a psychologically safe space, even if it's just an interview, for you to be yourself, because I really want to get to know you. And I think that's on one hand, that's how, HR professionals and hiring managers have adjusted over the years, even before the pandemic. This is something we've tried to do. Granted, it's a little bit more difficult to do virtually. But on the job seeker side, I'm talking to our audience right now. That's something that you can adjust as well yourself. Be a little bit more confident. Try to bring the best version of you into your interviews or into like each and every interaction that you have with the company, even if it's like an email or a cover letter that you're sending. Because the person on the other side will be able to see that, even if it's a simple email or even if it's like a cover letter or just like your application on an app, right? How about you, Meryl? What are your thoughts on this? Like, how can job seekers adjust any of their job seeking behavior, or how do they even show in their profile, for example, that they have the character that you're looking for when they're applying for jobs?
Right. So first to answer, like, how do you show it in your profile? As I said earlier, you would see if someone really made an effort with their CV. It's so easy to make a CV now. Use a Canva template, diba? Just put your details there. And then also the same with in Pass a Job, you have to input your job experiences, etc. You can see the difference between those who just put a one-liner, whereas those who really put what they've accomplished in their past jobs. So I guess the sincerity can also be seen through cover letters. You know, when it's just a generic letter, but it would be great, I guess, for job seekers who are watching today to express why are you choosing Pass a Job? Why are you choosing Canva to apply, diba? Out of all the jobs and the companies jobs that are available in companies that are hiring now. So I guess that's one way to show that you're sincere and that you're genuine in your interest for the company. With the bigger question, how can job seekers adjust? Like just a few insights from me. First is making sure that you're applying to legitimate jobs. I read an example in a tech company, not in the Philippines, but a tech company in the meditation and mindfulness space. There's a scam that they're making. So, for example, I got hired, and then so I signed an offer letter, and then they said that because of COVID, they're not able to. It would be easier for me to just purchase my own equipment, and then they'll just reimburse me after. And then what happened was, after she purchased the equipment, she had to send it to someone unknown for them to install programs that are needed and for them to add other security measures
Oh
in the device.
no.
And then later on, when she sent it, she and did not hear back from the person for a couple of days. That's when she realized that she was scammed. And I read the post. It was so heartbreaking for her because she's been looking for a job for so long. And I guess it's heartbreaking that during a pandemic, nagagawa pa natin to each other, right? That people are taking advantage of others' vulnerability and need. So I guess that's top one for me. Make sure that the companies you are applying to are legitimate talaga. Are you is it check nyo kung Gmail address ba yung provide or if it's really from the company. Or in Past Jobs case, we make sure that the companies are verified because we have a process in verifying these companies, diba? So there are ways to know and to make sure that the job posts are actually legit. Next is, I guess, getting all the help that you can get. Find mentors, do practice interviews. It's great that Liyab actually offers that, practice interviews for candidates, and join communities like Liyab, diba? Na even it's directed to Gen Zs, but as a millennial, I'm also learning and gaining so much. So it's the internet is really there's just like a wealth of resources here that we could learn from. And then I guess lastly is pitch yourself creatively. We need to stand out. We need, as job seekers, you need to stand out from the hundreds or thousands even the applications that companies receive. I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter a few months ago, there was someone who she wants to work for Spotify, so she designed her CV in a Spotify interface design, and then she tweeted it, and then a lot of employees in Spotify saw that, and now she's an intern there. So that's quite exciting also how social media opens us up to opportunities like that. And maybe just one last insight about this question. I don't know if you've heard of the podcast by Adam Grant, but it's one of my favorites. It's called Work Life. And then in one of the episodes there, one of his interviewees said that because he applied to many jobs and he's been rejected several times. But one thing that he learned to do in the middle of all those rejections is to ask the interviewer, is there anything in this interview or in my resume that might give you pause about considering me for this position? So I actually never thought of that before, diba? Because usually, to be honest, in most interviews, probably I would put my best foot forward and really try to impress. But it's great that he got that opportunity to actually seek feedback. Because even if you don't get that particular job, but the insight that you get from the recruiter and the interviewer can help you land like the job that's really for you, diba? So yeah.
I'm a fan of Adam Grant's podcast as well, but I definitely agree with Meryl. That's actually one of the things that we teach our learners at Liyab. Turn your rejection into an opportunity to get feedback. Right. And that's actually meeting a lot of people I've been trying to hire for Liyab also in the past year for interns and for management trainees. And I love that even when I send a rejection to let's say an applicant, well, as much as possible, I try to give them feedback. But whenever it's like a lot and I can't give that feedback, some of them would send a message back and ask them like, hey, what happened or how can I improve? And I love that. I really appreciate that. And you know what? Some honestly, it's not even because like they weren't good candidates, but because it's sometimes it's really just not a fit. I mean, if you tuned into my short talk earlier, right? It doesn't mean that there's something bad with you or that you're not employable, but it's really just not a fit. And for a lot of companies, especially with the ones that are protective of culture, right? um that's really something that we can't really like give you feedback on and tell you like you have to change your entire personality just so you can get hired at our company, right? Not necessarily something you want to say to a person as well. But at least being very candid and being very honest about like the feedback that you're giving them so that they can improve and actually so that they can refine their job search as well, right? Looking for companies that are a better fit. So yeah, and also agree that try to get as much help as you can. That's precisely why Liab has a community in the first place, because I don't want it to be just me helping other people out. I love that there are people in the community, trying to answer each other's questions, sharing job opportunities with people there. And precisely why we've decided to partner with Pass a Job for this whole career fair as well, because the very nature of the app is to encourage you to share opportunities with each other and really feel like you're part of I guess like a collective of people. Like we said at the very beginning of this panel discussion, it's a collective experience, and so the best we can do is really just like help each other out. um I guess like as we try to wrap up our discussion today, I wanted because our audience is made up of like students and early career professionals who are fairly fresh in the job market. I wanted to ask both of you what you think about Gen Zs and if they're equipped to handle a challenging job hunt. What advice would you give them so that they can have a successful job hunt, aside from, of course, the many great tips that you've already shared? But, given the challenges of a pandemic job hunt, what advice would you give them to address like this time in particular? Mariel, maybe we can start with you.
All right. I guess some of the things that I would also want to advise, because I was in the same boat, like looking for a job last year, diba? And Romeo also, who just also recently got employed. It's so challenging, not just physically, but also emotionally, diba? Looking for a job, the right job for you, which was your talk earlier, well, it isn't something very easy. So I guess first is knowing what you want. Identify what you really want. Are you looking for, if you're starting out, are you okay with 20,000, or is 37,000 not enough? Or are you looking for like a bigger amount, diba? So set standards for yourself, but also do your research. Don't just make sure that the standards that you've set aren't baseless. And research also about companies. Does this company align with my values, as Romeo emphasized earlier? Uh, you've probably heard also about Basecamp, who banned societal and political values conversations in the workplace, diba? So are you okay with that? Is that something you can do? Can you keep your political thoughts to yourself? Or if not, then choose another company, diba? And second is upskill. It's so important to keep making yourself better. One of my friends, his background is in customer support, but he really self-taught himself digital marketing, SEO in particular. And it's quite amazing how just tireless efforts in learning self-teaching himself and going through online classes. Now he was hired as, as a digital marketer. So it's quite amazing what we can do if we set our mind into something, diba? And like I said earlier, there's just so much resources in the internet for us to benefit from. And lastly, I guess, and something that's very innate and in the DNA of Pass a Job is expanding your network. It's it's tougher now because of the pandemic, but it's no excuse for us to stop creating and building connections with each other. Our chief strategy officer, Millie, gave a talk about that earlier, and we'll share the file of the talk on our on our YouTube channel next time. But there's so much to learn in expanding your network and building meaningful connections. So I don't know if you've heard of this study that you are more likely to find a job with from your weak ties compared to those who are closer to you, because those who are closer to you, pareho kayo ng circles and pareho kayo ng network halos, but your weak ties travel in different networks and have more ideas and have I'm not saying abandon your friends. That's not what I'm trying to say here. What I'm saying is that expanding your current network wouldn't hurt and will probably even benefit you more in the process, diba? And yeah, I guess just giving importance to relationships, because that will help you. I got my current job through referrals, and actually most of the jobs that I've had, whether part-time, full-time, or project-based, is through referrals. So it really helps to have like a good support system and a good network. And as I said earlier, don't be afraid to ask for help, diba? Hindi siya nakakahiya. We're in this together, and it's harder if you just kung sarilihin mo yung struggles mo, it's going to eat you up. But if you are vocal that this is what you need, maybe the job that you need is just a post away, diba? Or similarly, on the side of friends who know people na naghahanap ng jobs, maybe it's just a referral away. The jobs that you see on Pass a Job, you don't know that people actually might need it. So just refer them. It wouldn't hurt. So yeah.
It wouldn't hurt, and you get rewarded if it's a successful
Exactly.
referral.
Correct.
I mean, selfishly, but you can also think about it that way, right? And I one of my favorite things from what you shared, Meryl, is like knowing what you want. And a perfect example for this is actually like a conversation I had with Romeo a few months ago. He knew exactly what kind of like job he wanted next. And I'm like personally so happy that he's found that now. And so, Romeo, I wanted to hear advice now from you. What advice would you give fellow Gen Zs so that they can have a successful job hunt as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think what's so great about this generation, right? And I think I can speak because I'm seeing it in my peers, I'm seeing it with my friends, even if we're in I would say, the older part of this generation, right in the middle of the millennials and the Gen Z, right? Is that it's such a smart generation, right? Like in the talk yesterday, the panel with Gino, he said something about this generation having that innate advantage because we actually grew up with this. We grew up with digital, we grew up with technology, that it's basically second nature to us to keep up with the trends. And what's I like about it is that they're also combining, that technical savviness with a hunger and a drive to do better. They're being really intentional about, how do I not just improve myself, but also improve the people around me. And when we're given platforms like Passajob, right, it makes it all the more better because now I get something in return as well. So that's really interesting, right? That just to talk about this generation, because so much has shifted in the mindset. Now, talking about advice, I guess I can only re-emphasize what Meryl has already said, right? Like my first advice, actually, I even have it written down here, is that to take a moment to introspect and really align with yourself. about what you want and what you want to achieve. Of course, nobody expects you to have it all figured out, right? I'm not talking about knowing what you want 5 years from now, but having, I guess, like a sort of direction just for your year. Like to share my story there, how I got into Canva and how I spoke to Dee about it even was that I was really interested in tech. That was where I started. I was interested in the startup scene. So I just one day I decided, why not, ask her again, how do I reconnect to this ecosystem? I'm not in a rush, but I really do want to be in that position again where I'm talking to all these people and networking with all these people. So just having that sort of direction for the year and then thinking about how do I translate that to my month to month basis, to my day to day. Because when you have that figured out, you'll start to subconsciously act on it, right? You wouldn't know that you're doing it, but you'll catch yourself taking on activities, taking on opportunities that kind of lead you into that direction because you've already established it. Like yung one of the a good quote shared to me in my previous company at Finest People by my colleague was that, and it's very cliche, but it's stronger in Filipino, is that kapag alam mo kasi yung bakit, madali yung paano. So getting to that destination gets all the more easier once you understand the quote unquote why. And then the second advice there, I guess, to ride on that is also to learn how to communicate that. The interesting point that Deirdre mentioned earlier was that sometimes it's the nerves, sometimes it's the confidence that gets in the way of what you want to say. And what I personally do to, counter that is that I take a moment to kind of document all those wins, but also all those losses. Like it really depends on your style of documenting things, right? My personal style that was actually recommended to me by a friend was to email myself whenever I encountered a significant win or a significant loss, to always take a moment to write it all down, and then so that I could always come back to it, because that's the thing about communication. It's about involving the other person, the other side, in that moment, and the only way to do that is to be familiar with the moment yourself. So you don't want to just trust your memory. You kind of want to have like a playbook to go back to all the time. And then lastly, I guess, and this was mentioned earlier, is to not stop at the nose. So definitely take every opportunity to learn from the process. Like one of my guiding principles is that every moment is a win or learn moment. It's never a lose moment, because you're always taking that moment to kind of absorb, what did I lack? How do I improve? How do I get better? And the beauty in job hunting is that, wading through all those no's is actually going to make that one single yes so much more powerful. Like that feeling of finally getting that job in your dream company, it's so powerful. It just motivates you so much more. Um, and trust that companies, are not saying no, period. It's never really about that. Like speaking from my current experience in Canva, right? We never equate a rejection to a goodbye, because that's not really the case. People change, people grow. We believe in improvement. We believe that, if you continue to develop yourself, eventually you will be in that place that you want to be. It might take time, but you'll get there, definitely.
Thank you so much, Romeo. I love that we are ending today's panel discussion on such an inspiring note, such great advice from both Meryl and Romeo, and how, even I'm inspired. I'm not even actively job hunting right now. And I'm inspired by all of the things that both of you shared. And I hope our audience can take so much from that. I really hope you see that as reassurance to keep moving forward. And really, I know it's difficult right now to find the job that would fit you the most, but there's really, hold out hope, and there's a lot of things that you can do to make that goal a reality, right? So thank you so much, Meryl and Romeo, for being with us today, for closing the career fair with me. I guess before I say goodbye to both of you, I wanted to give this quick opportunity for both of you to promote anything, like super quick, anything going on with Passage Job or Canva that you would want to invite our audience right now to act on. Romeo, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing I have to share the most here is that we are a growing company. So we are hiring globally, and we are planning to hire a lot. Like I mentioned, we have started to hire over about 100 people, and it's only what, May? It's only that nearing the half of the year. And we don't plan to stop there. So if you are interested in Canva, I do really encourage you to apply because we have so many roles starting to open up. And even if it doesn't go well in the first try, we're not closing the door. Yeah, feel free to apply again, keep trying, because we're always going to be, opening our arms to whoever is interested and wants to be part of our journey here in Canada.
Awesome. Thanks, Romeo. How about you, Meryl?
All right. So please, everyone, if you haven't, please download Pass a Job. It's available in the App Store and in the Play Store. We're really trying to solve a problem here, something that's like a big problem here in the country. And we hope that we have your help by downloading it, applying, and referring. Referring is super important. As we said earlier, you never know who might need it. So just a quick explanation of how it works is that if you refer someone and that person gets hired, you get a referral fee. So it's really a win-win situation. You got to help someone, but also you got to earn, diba? So it's a new platform. We hope that you give it a chance. It's easy to download, and we're also available in the web platform. And also for employers who are watching now, please get in touch with us if you are interested in posting your jobs through Pass a Job. Thank you, Romeo. Thank you, Deirdre.
All right. Thank you, Meryl, and thank you, Romeo. So thank you so much for ending or closing this virtual career fair with me tonight, both of you. And to our audience right now, the entire team behind this event hopes that you learned a lot throughout the week, and more importantly, that you are inspired to grow your career with the different organizations that we featured. Before we go, I just wanted to once again thank all our community partners. So we have several different orgs from all over the Philippines, actually, and from different universities. And thank you so much. This event wouldn't have been possible without you. And of course, thank you so much to our co-presenter, Pass a Job. Right? Just a reminder, you can still sign up for an account at Pass a Job, and you can use the invitation code LIABVCF. All the different openings listed under the career fair are still available even after the event. So you can apply or even refer friends and family for these positions. We'd also like to thank our major company partners, Texas Instruments and Unilab. Also, a quick thank you to Great Deals E-commerce and MedGrocer, who we all got to meet today through their booths in our event platform. Thank you so much for participating in the Virtual Career Fair 2021. And until next time, thank you, everyone. Good evening.